Do you enjoy Elder Scrolls but wish it had the gameplay of Kingsfield with the influence of Lovecraft? Then Dread Delusion may be the game for you. Being made by lovely Hell Place, you may recognize both their name and their style from the first Dread X collection with Shatter. Dread Delusion even got its start on a demo horror anthology with the PS1 Haunted Demo disc. The game has been available in early access for around a year now and has seen significant updates over its early access life. But what exactly is Dread Delusion? Well, it's listed as being Morrowind meets Kingsfield. I've never played Morrowind, but from what I've heard, that homage may be a touch exaggerated.
And I am not a fan of this Akaviri anime that people keep speaking of. In any case, I wasn't able to answer this question, so they beat the fuck out of my legs with chitin maces.
I mean, the dev gets off to a good start by having the player begin the game as a prisoner. Over the course of a very brief tutorial where you set up your initial build, the game opens up the first of 3 islands. Only 2 are available right now. Given short instructions for how to continue the main quest, you can just ignore it and get involved with various characters and factions. Just a brief rundown of those factions is as follows. The Apostatic Union. They're essentially the Imperium of mankind, but instead of worshipping a corpse god, they prefer to make gods into corpses. Their Inquisition branch is responsible for your new freedom and being set down this path. The other factions on this island don't have much interaction right now, but include goblins, Wiccans, and outlaws. While they are severely lacking in content, I believe it's safe to say they'll have more added in time. Currently, the only way to raise faction reputation with most of them is by selling godlets, which are creatures whose cocoons you can find out in the world. This reputation can be rather difficult to navigate currently, seeing something like Fallout New Vegas, a neutral reputation results in you not being attacked. However, in this game, you'll be attacked on sight by goblins, bandits, and Wiccans. Only the Apostatic Union will refrain from attacking, making my faction choice here very easy. It made sense that the Darkstar Mercs would attack you in the tutorial, and even the goblins, as apart from one of them, the rest seem very animalistic in nature. However, Wiccans and outlaws should either remain neutral or not damage faction reputation, at least with the outlaws, for they frequent so much of the world. Speaking of Darkstar Mercs, let's get into the main quest. So the Inquisition is charging a fortress and being slaughtered with each wave. Running out of manpower, the leader of the group decides to conscript the player into the next wave. I can only assume that upon seeing my character's half-starved body, he determined the enemy would think me nothing more than a peasant or thief. Of which I learned these mercs have very Saudi Arabian stances on thieves. Turns out a prisoner with a broken sword doesn't do well against tough enemies decked out in armor. Death leads to these altars, but we'll touch on that later. Anyways, with a confirmed way of respawning, the prisoner reaches Vela Kalos, just in time to see her off. I guess we're no closer to catching her. Ha, yeah, you know what I'm saying? Please share the video, please. Anyways, we're still conscripted. At least we get fairly clear instructions to track down ex-members of Vela Kalos' crew. So far, there are 2 in the game, but I'll get to them later. Past this point is when you hit the first of 3 main islands. Now, they aren't Skyrim levels of large, but if you put all 3 together, they start to become that size. The first island, yes, islands, they're floating chunks of rock, and there's a whole lore video put up by some freak who keeps stalking this game's development. Video is good though, you should definitely go check it out. Is the most typical of the island. At least as typical as the game can be when you're walking across sky rocks in the gravitational pull of a neutron star. There's a farm that's getting raided due to food production, which is honestly hitting a little close to home, dev. A forest area filled with butterfrees that are just dicks, and most importantly, there's a central town. It's got all the staples of a fantasy RPG town. There's a cool inn where you can sleep, stores to shop at, local military occupation force HQ, and a thieves guild. All the makings of an RPG town, which is why I'm saddened to say that at the current state it's very surface level. Don't get me wrong, there's content here from hidden items to short quests, however it's all few and often one and done. At the Outlaw Tavern, you're told about how to steal from the shops, sneak out at night and pick some locks to then steal their stuff. This is fine, however, when you go to do it, literally nothing can go wrong. A patrolling guard won't ask you nicely to stop, or beat the shit out of you. The occupants of the shops cannot be woken up, and finally the items you can steal are just a delusion and predetermined items. No health potions or maybe some crafting supplies from the various shops. The first quest for the Outlaws group here is the same problem. Hey, take these silks to the man in the tavern. Even if you fail the inspection, you don't suffer at all. Just a, hey, stop that kid, you're too nice to be running with a crowd who would do this. Think of your mother, Timmy. She'd be ashamed. I don't know where I'm going with this. I mean, an after-school special is fine, but at the very least, take some coin off me as a penalty for fucking up. This applies to other more serious quests, like helping the Union track down a god, or how you solve the problems over in the Endless Realm. Everyone kind of just shrugs and goes, that sucks. Guess we'll just have to have a pint and wait for this all to blow over. Now, the dev has mentioned that choices that seem meaningless or appear to have no significant outcome will alter the ending. And I also need to remind everyone that this is early access. Penalties and outcomes will most likely be added in. I simply hope it's not just a different panel and some text that alters at the end of the game. Well, I've already mentioned the Endless Realm, so let's talk about it. Travel in the game is handled via connecting bridges. To cross, you need a passport, of which you are initially handed one by the Inquisitor, but later ones you'll need to buy from a store or earn through quest. The Endless Realm is essentially Sylvania, but they're just undead that keep their wits about them. Usually, as during the Cadaver Crusade, they ate their way through their neighboring territories. This island gives off a more gothic and haunting setting, which I really enjoy. It honestly came close to reminding me of good old Dark Souls as I walk through large stone structures, fighting demonic-looking creatures. Really interesting, but suffers similar problems to the prior island. The third island, Clockwork Kingdom, isn't in the game yet, but was a setting of the haunted demo disc. You may be thinking that the maps are kind of barren. I want to remind that they are getting stuff added on, but that I've only talked about the core islands so far. There are islands above and below that belong to these three islands. An Academy of Wizards is in the sky, as well as a seemingly empty castle. Helping you with all this is your trusty map, which is different from other games in that you first need to track down a cartographer and essentially jot down locations of interest to build up your map. When this was first introduced, it was very barren, and while stuff has been added, some still find it too limited. I, for one, really enjoy it. The game can throw you off just from how wild the environments are, but once you manage to get centered, usually by finding a town and scoping things out, it will be much easier to traverse. Now we hit the reason I waited on putting out this Recon review, the Emberian update. First things first, I must applaud the dev for being humble enough to admit he needed help with the game. See, combat isn't this game's focus, and the dev even states that it isn't. However, running past guys doesn't feel right either, so you try combat, and it simply wasn't very good. Best a person could do was spec in the magic and just one-shot people. A parry was added, but the animation took a second after pressing the button. Only once the animation was done would it register and parry. Well, this has been tightened up, and some new animations are in from the dev of Lunacid and Lost in Vivo. I won't say combat is a highlight of the game, but it at least feels better. Can't say the same about the addition of thrown weapons. Neither do enough damage to warrant usage. Best use of them is to lace with poison and toss at an enemy before engaging. Stealth also got an update. You can now be a stealth archer, though I'm not sure if that's a good thing. The update finally added on some main quest content. There's now a merc in the Wobbly Noggin that will join up, and I like how he comments on your character's background based on your choices. The other is the titular Emberian, which if you watch a certain lore video, should not be alive. Her quest was surprisingly fun to engage in, and felt much more meaningful throughout compared to some which just have you go to a location just to be told to go back and get something else. Part of this main quest was the town of Rustburg, which is a charmingly fun, if underused dungeon. Yeah, it's cool you found a second use for truth potions, but it was just the one time. It'd be nice to have a a broken bridge or something so we can stealth through, but need to get across before our potion wears off lest we be stuck on an invisible platform. One welcome addition is a fleshing out of the RPG mechanic. As it stands, there's 4 stats that govern 2 subcategories. Right now they are horribly balanced, not in usage. Lore can lead to solving puzzles and better spell usage, Guile helps with agility and picking locks, Charms, and Might governs attack and defense. If you find a locked door and can't pick the lock, you can try seeing if your might is high enough to smash it down. This is a great foundation, but the leveling system makes it way too easy to max out right now. So you don't level up by killing enemies, but by completing quests and picking up delusions. Honestly, I would either drop the pickups or find a way to implement them. I mean, you can pick up one in a tree that's just in plain sight. At least there's some hidden or behind locked doors, but you'll have your character maxed out before even finishing the current list of quests. Whereas delusions are in abundance, material is not. Ore is the basis for upgrading, and unless you rush the mine at a player home, you will have limited income of ore. Once you get the mine, it becomes rather trivial. I don't know what to tell the devs on this one. I mean, I would use the docking station at the first town or the mine owned by the outlaws to sell to the player, but currently the mine is just the path of least resistance. Speaking of selling supplies can become a headache, as you can only sell one at a time. 99 arrows starts looking like more of a headache to sell than just chopping up some butterflies and tentacle monsters. And that somehow transitions us to the final problem, speed. Even at basic agility, you can just Dark Souls run past everything. With the reputation harm, there's also not much I can say to argue against the tactic. Go to Rustburg and you'll have to at least chop through or clumsily run around a handful of outlaws and Darkstar mercs. I only really ran past enemies in Dark Souls because I wanted to get my souls and kill the boss of the area. That being said, don't touch the boost agility, that shit is hilarious to use. So in short, Dread Delusion is an imaginative and interesting game that mechanically is a shallow mess. I believe this game can be something great, but it's a garden with not much topsoil. Or to put it bluntly, the game needs to be tightened up. Fix the leveling, enemy encounters, deepen the usage of RPG mechanics, and more. I like when the in-merc remarked about our backstory. Let us use that at some point, or have it be used against us at another. Don't be afraid to penalize players for screwing up. The best part of a role-playing game is playing a role to solve the game.
And now, folks, it's time to say goodnight. We sincerely appreciate your patronage and hope we've succeeded in bringing you an enjoyable evening of entertainment. Please drive home carefully and come back again soon. Good night.